And since I was trained as an architect and became a photographer, I care a lot about how our world looks, especially Boston. I've spent my career photographing buildings for architects and magazines, and it has been an honor to work in a city as rich as Boston. I've also authored books about Boston and its history, and my photographs seek to unlock some of the magic that makes Boston such a rich place to work. This book on the Big Dig was made possible by a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts. Boston's fortunes came from the sea. And I spent time looking at the city's history and through photographs and maps. Boston keeps figuring out wonderful ways to reinvent itself. Today I want to talk about why maps are so terrific and why I use steel to transform them into works of art. Maps are potent documents, sometimes true, sometimes not. On the left, Saul Steinberg's famous New Yorker cover of America as seen from New York City. And on the right, a nautical map of New York Harbor. And you better bet those sounding numbers better be correct or somebody's going to get fired. Not only do maps stand for the territory they represent, they live in an abstract universe of their own. Take a look at this 1879 map of the inside of a man's head and all of the philosophies that might possibly motivate a person. On this highly detailed map of how to succeed in life, you better board the right system railroad if you want to reach success and avoid all the bad habits that can plague you in later life. This is one of my favorites, a dog's view of the perfect English country estate, complete with a butcher shop and free bones. This map was painted by Jasper Johns in 1961, and it's in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. Johns was given a sketch map of the United States by his friend Robert Rauschenberg, and in his own words, Johns saw an image that was seen but not looked at, not examined. When describing how he made the painting, he said, "I'm painting a map. I'm not making a painting of a map." Big difference. Yeah, this is a movie of me laying out a steel map of the United States. I hand cut each state and finished them with a torch. And because I did this, I know the geography of the United States in a completely different way than if I hadn't done this. Cutting Wyoming, that's no problem. Cutting some of the other states, like Maryland, that was tough. With all the political talk about balkanized, polarized United States politics, I thought of maybe making this map with huge borders between the states. Then I thought better of it. Look at how a map can communicate a really great idea. This map was recently published in the New York Times. It proposes an 1,800-acre addition to the tip of Manhattan. It's a new city for 250,000 people to work and live. Governor's Island is subsumed as a park. New wetlands are have protected the city from storm surge. And look, Red Hook gets a subway stop. I want to put a plug in for people who make things with their hands. Consider the common surnames: Smith, Cooper, Sawyer. These are people who worked either shaped metals, made barrels, or cut wood. Since I now work with a digital camera, I guess I should call myself Vanderpixel. As our lives become increasingly based on digital representations of the world, we shouldn't lose sight of the values of physical objects. They have beauty, craft, and symbolic value. They are real, tactile things. Here's an example. This is a Google map of the Natick Mall that I got off my iPhone. And now, on the left, an aerial photograph that I took from Google Earth. And on the right, that's a shot of the circuit board of my old digital camera. I'm sorry. This is my steel workshop in Newton, where I live, and it's where all the cutting, welding, grinding, and assembling happen. It's in the basement of my house, and I have not blown up the place yet. My wife is a gifted jewelry collector and designer. She loves going to Santa Fe, and the work by Native Americans she collects are things of rare beauty. When COVID hit, we made a series of necklaces, bracelets, and pins we designed and fabricated out of steel, brass, and silver to generate money for COVID relief. We also decided to make rocks with legs. We think that rocks need to get out, and they need legs to do it. To date, we've raised over $20,000, and all of it going to COVID relief. This Back Bay map, which Gallery NAGA and I offered to collectors, the map alone raised $7,000, every penny of it going to the Massachusetts COVID Relief Fund. Our location tonight, where we're speaking, is on this map. It's the left-hand column, and right on the blocks between Fairfield and Exeter Streets. Here's a blow-up of that block, and here we are. This is Nantucket, which I cut from a single sheet of 14-gauge steel. When heated, the steel leaves telltale tempering patterns, like a graph of the different temperatures the metal has reached. These are the lines you see here. The purple, which is shown here, shows that the steel reached a temperature of 540 degrees Fahrenheit. I first discovered this map, one of my favorites, when I was in architecture school. It's called the Figure Ground Study. It was made by Giambattista Noli in 1748. It's a map of Rome, and it's called a figure ground study. The map is so accurate that it was used by Roman planners all the way into the 1970s. Noli made the map by surveying the city with surveyors' chains and an extraordinarily accurate compass. The Noli map teaches you something unique about Rome. It tells you why the city is so beautiful. One of the theories is that Rome was made out of a solid, continuous block of built form. The streets and squares were cut through it with a knife, sculpted out of form. When you walk through Rome, the buildings are you go through a series of rooms. The buildings are the walls, the sky is the ceiling. It's like being in a mansion where you walk from room to room. I co-authored a series of articles in the Boston Globe called Cityscapes with Robert Campbell, Pulitzer Prize-winning architectural critic. These were then and now photographs which compared the city of the past and the city of the present. For one article, I found an aerial photograph of Boston in 1940, and I looked at it and I said, where did all those streets go? When I superimposed it on a contemporary map of the city, I realized what had happened. And Campbell says, one of his favorite quotes is, the more streets your city has, the more interesting it is. Where would you rather eat dinner? In the North End or in City Hall Plaza? This map from 1852 shows Boston when the city was a machine for moving goods from land to sea. I enlarged the map, I sharpened it in Photoshop, put numbers on the blocks, cut them out as patterns for steel, cut them with a handsaw, and then finished each block with a torch. The steel is raised, each piece is raised off the surface on legs to give more contrast between the streets and the blocks. So now it's time to go a little bit deeper. I'm a fan of Bill Rankin. He's a professor at Yale who deconstructs the meaning of maps. If you want to treat and have some time, go to his website, radicalcartography.com. This is a marvelous figure ground map that Bill did of Boston. I never get tired of looking at this map because you are watching the unique footprints of settlement left by different neighborhoods in the city. It's a remarkable document. You can download it from his website. And this is Bill's new book, which is about the transformation of territory in the 20th century through cartography. You can also see the growth of land making in Boston over 400 years. All right, deeper still. Much has been written about the relationship of the map and the territory it describes. A French philosopher and cultural theorist named Jean Baudrillard has written an essay titled The Procession of Simulacra, which argues that we've become so reliant on our maps that we've lost touch with the reality they represent. Baudrillard refers to a wonderful Louis Borges fable about maps. Borges' story describes a powerful king with a marvelous rich kingdom. The king asks his cartographers for a map so precise that it will describe his whole kingdom, and it has to be 1-to-1. The map covers the kingdom. It equals the kingdom. Sadly, by the time the map is done, the king's kingdom has rotted away. And what's left of the map also rots. And in Borges' tale, you can't tell the original from the facsimile of it. Don't you love the French philosophers? So maybe steel isn't such a bad material after all. Steel maps are hard to fold. They're made from the iron ore and minerals that comes from the ground they represent. And they don't fade. The very act of assembling a historical map of Boston in a clunky, unforgiving material like steel helps to orient me to the city I love through time and space. As I hop back and forth between centuries, I begin to ask myself some questions. How did we get here? Where might we be going? And what do we need for the journey ahead? Thank you.